I spent 10 years of my life completely depressed and riddled with anxiety. The biggest cause of my terrible mental health? Dating. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in for another episode of Wildly Capable with Kate. Today, we're going to talk about how dating and relationships in general, any type of relationship, can truly make or break your mental health. I've seen dating affect my own wellness in drastic ways. I've also seen it affect the mental health and well being of some of my clients and friends and family members, sometimes in really positive and beautiful ways, but other times in really damaging and sometimes very serious ways. But either way, there's no denying that dating and relationships do affect a person's mental health. It's just inevitable. So let's talk about why that is, what that may look like, and how to better ensure that you're caring for your mental health every step of the way, no matter what relationship or season of life that you're in. Back when I was a teenager and throughout my 20s, there was no other factor in my life that affected my day to day more than dating did. Like most kids and like most young girls at that time, I honestly was boy crazy. And my identity, my self worth, and my value all hinged a ton on who I was dating, who was pursuing me, what dates I was or wasn't going on, when I wasn't the object of somebody's infatuation, or I wasn't receiving attention by men or through dates, or when my significant other and I were fighting or going through issues. The rest of my world would much more easily crumble around me as a result of those things. Not to mention the times where I was actually in unhealthy and sometimes even toxic or abusive relationships. In those circumstances, obviously, my mental health was down the drain. Maintaining my well being wasn't honestly even an option during those times. In those times, focusing on schoolwork was next to impossible. Being a good friend got pushed to the side. Pursuing my dreams wasn't a top priority. And most of all, most importantly, my nervous system would be completely dysregulated and my mental health would just fall to the wayside. It was something that I couldn't focus on and I couldn't maintain. All of my time, energy, and thought power was spent on worrying and thinking about dating and relationships. Things got so bad that at one point back in 2017, I was eventually hospitalized thanks to how unhealthy I was mentally. I spent a night in a psych ward after one particularly traumatic and dramatic incident with my boyfriend at the time. And after that, I was in outpatient mental health care for another 6 months or so. I also saw a therapist during that time and saw a therapist for about 3 or 4 years on and off. So clearly, dating at that time was something that was robbing me of my life's purpose and vitality. It was not something that was serving me. It was not something that was enhancing my life. It was damaging for me. Now, luckily, I've done a ton of healing work around my depression, my anxiety, and my traumatic relationship experiences, like that one back in 2017. But my story is just one of millions, you guys. So many people have experienced how damaging dating and relationships can be on their mental health. In obvious cases, like with abuse, someone's mental health taking a huge hit is expected. But a decline in mental health can obviously be seen in non abuse cases too. Relationships where two people aren't in alignment, relationships where conflict isn't handled well, where people don't fight fairly, relationships where one person is avoidant and the other person is anxious. Each of these relationship dynamics, along with many more, can cause a person's mental health to suffer too. So, why is that? Why do dating and relationships have so much power over our lives, over our happiness, our health? Dating and relationships can have a significant impact on our lives and happiness for several reasons, both psychological and scientific reasons. So that's what I want to talk about today. Let's break that down to better understand why dating and relationships play such a big role in our well being. To start, here are some key factors as to why that is. First, social and cultural norms. Societal and cultural expectations often place a high value on romantic relationships. Some cultures do that more than others. Now, this means that many people grow up with the belief that finding a partner and building a family is a fundamental part of a fulfilling life. It's ingrained in them from the time that they're little kids. And if they don't get married or have kids, they believe that there's something wrong with them. This societal pressure can cause people to prioritize relationships, sometimes more than what is healthy, and also to beat themselves up when things don't go as planned within a relationship. Our cultural pressures play a huge role in why relationships are so important. Another factor is biological and evolutionary. So, humans are social beings, and the desire for companionship is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. The need for social connection, intimacy, and the formation of bonds have been crucial for the survival and well being of our species as a whole, for human beings. This is literally ingrained in us as a species. It is biological for us to desire a mate, to desire connection, community, a relationship. It's similar to how there's often a point in a lot of women's lives where they suddenly have what's called, quote unquote, baby fever. They can't stop thinking about babies. They want to constantly be around them. They honestly like crave them even. Baby fever is just a result of biology doing its thing on a woman's body and communicating to her what it knows it's ready for and desiring. Now, that idea of baby fever is very similar to how humans are drawn towards connection. It's hardwired in us through millions of years of human development. Historically, those who are partnered off and have significant others are in a pair or live within a strong communal culture. Those are the ones that live longer, healthier, safer lives than those who are, our lone wolves. Finding a quote unquote mate is ingrained in our genetics, our biology, and our evolution. So that's another huge factor. Up next is emotional fulfillment. Relationships, for many, when they are healthy especially, can create beautiful emotional support, companionship, and intimacy for people. Emotional connections with others add to feelings of happiness, belonging, and a sense of purpose in a person's life. Sharing experiences with a partner can increase the satisfaction you have in your life, causing you to want to pursue it and be a part of it more and more, especially once you've had a taste of that fulfillment before. Having someone to turn to in the good days and the bad days, to try new things with, or just to be bored at home on the couch with, fulfills us emotionally in so many ways. So, of course, we're drawn to it. When you have someone by your side, you feel safer, you feel more seen, you feel more cared for than you may on your own. So, emotional fulfillment is a huge reason why we are so drawn to relationships. Just makes sense. Another reason is identity and self worth. For many people, relationships play a role in shaping their identity and their self worth. While dating and relationships, like we talked about, can be damaging to some people's sense of self worth, which we're going to dive into even more here in a second, too, being in a loving relationship, on the other hand, can positively impact one's self esteem, providing a sense of validation and acceptance. I know in my own relationship, I have really grown into myself and I've really grown my self worth because I feel so safe and so cared for and so loved. So, when we're in a healthy relationship that doesn't throw off our nervous systems or leave us hurt or dysregulated, we're so much more free to explore who we are as individuals. And that's because we have someone to fall back on if our explorations get tough or if things in our career or our life or what we're dreaming of don't go as planned. And you have someone cheering you on as you step out into the world. Because of this, you're able to more easily explore new facets of your identity, making relationships appealing for this reason too. Up next is biological rewards. Engaging in romantic relationships and forming close bonds with people triggers the release of neurotransmitters such as dopamine and oxytocin in our bodies. These chemicals are associated with pleasure, reward, and bonding, and they contribute to the feelings of happiness and satisfaction in our lives. As you can see, even science shows us why we love love so much. Another explanation has to do with cultural narratives and media influence. The portrayal of love and relationships in media plays a huge, and I really do mean huge, role in shaping societal expectations and pressures when it comes to dating and relationships. I mean, how many of you have seen movies or TV shows or read books about romance and love and healthy relationships and the magnetism that they bring and the fulfillment that they bring and wanted it more after you read that book or after you saw that movie? I mean, it's just, we're bombarded with it all the time. From rom-coms to dating tips and major magazine columns, romance is thrown at us constantly. And it's pretty hard not to think about it or feel bad about not being in love when you're constantly bombarded with those messages. The media, obviously, is a big influence on how individuals perceive the importance of romantic connections in their lives. So, right there, you guys, there are 6 concrete reasons as to why love, dating, and relationships have such a strong pull on us, why we care about them so much, why sometimes, honestly, it's all we think about. And those are just 6 high level reasons. If I sat here for another few hours, I could come up with dozens more. Clearly, there is no denying that connection through romance and relationships is something that many of us, really most of us in this world, desire greatly, for whatever reason that may be, as there are so many. And since we are so drawn to relationships, relationships also have a ton of power as to how our lives and the satisfaction, happiness, peace, and fulfillment that we experience within them plays out. Relationships, specifically healthy relationships where growth is at the center, they lift us up, they help us heal, they encourage us to be better, and they provide fun, joy, and meaning in our lives. When you are happy and in love, you're able to much more easily handle life's challenges than when you're in an unhealthy relationship. To better understand how impactful relationships are on our mental health, let me first and foremost define what I mean when I say unhealthy relationship, because that's kind of what we're focusing on more in this episode. So, an unhealthy relationship encompasses numerous different types of toxicity. This could include emotional abuse, manipulation, control, or just a lack of communication and respect overall. Or, like I said earlier, an unhealthy relationship can also qualify as one where forms of abuse are less present, but the relationship's alignment is simply off. These dynamics can create a breeding ground for mental health struggles. Take it from me. One of the primary ways unhealthy relationships impact mental health is through prolonged stress. And that can trigger a cascade of physiological and physical responses in the body. Elevated stress levels are associated with a range of mental health issues, from anxiety and depression to actual physical health problems, too. Like I mentioned earlier, I became so stressed and so unhealthy in one of my past relationships that, you guys, I literally had to spend the night in a psychiatric hospital. That was one of the scariest nights of my life, and it certainly was not a place I would have ended up in had I not been in that damaging, unhealthy relationship to begin with. That relationship and others in my life before and after it have turned me into a shell of myself. Through relationships, I developed immense anxiety, where I'd find myself having panic attacks randomly throughout my day or whenever the stress of that relationship would become too much. At one point, I literally called my parents while I was in college at USC, and I told them that I thought there was something wrong with my heart. I thought I had a heart murmur or something like that. But it turns out I was just having panic attacks. Talk about a mind body connection there. Talk about a relationship damaging my health. As you can see through my own stories, relationships can have a profound impact on our mental health. And that impact can turn negative very quickly if we're not aware and if we're not careful. On top of that, unhealthy relationships can erode your sense of self-worth and self-esteem. Constant criticism, belittling, or manipulation can make a person just doubt their value and their capabilities. Or just being with someone who isn't very good at communicating or providing reassurance, that too can create the same outcome. Either way, over time, this can cause a person to lose their sense of self-worth and to stop loving themselves altogether. Another significant aspect is the isolation that often accompanies toxic relationships. Whether due to controlling behavior or emotional manipulation, individuals may find themselves cut off completely from friends, family, and support networks. Many of us, we also tend to isolate out of shame or embarrassment when we aren't doing well, when we're embarrassed by what we're going through or who we're dating or what we're accepting into our lives. Isolation is a known risk factor for mental health issues, as it deprives individuals of the social connections that are so vital for emotional well being. I know I myself have isolated in many instances when I was in unhealthy situations. I didn't want other people to know what was going on. I was embarrassed by it. I really couldn't even make sense of it for myself. So I just, became a hermit, and I became a hermit in an unhealthy way. Not in the way where I was just spending time with myself and loving myself, but in a way where I was too ashamed to see other people. And that kept me stuck in those toxic, unhealthy relationships for longer than I needed to be stuck in them. These unhealthy relationships, and especially when you isolate in them, they can foster a cycle of codependency where people become overly reliant on their partner for validation and their sense of identity. That definitely was true in my own circumstances. This dependency can make it challenging for someone to break free from the unhealthy dynamic. It further exacerbates their mental health issues. When you don't feel confident enough to try new things, to meet new people, to really just break out on your own, you not only stay in relationships that are no longer serving you for far too long, out of fear that you won't be able to break out on your own, that you won't be okay once you're single, but your health will ultimately undoubtedly be affected too. To paint a picture of what all of those factors may look like in a relationship, I'm going to tell you another one of my own stories. So, back in 2021, I was in a relationship for roughly 7 or 8 months. And it was not really a relationship, it was more so a situationship because that guy never actually made it clear that we were exclusive or together, but instead he just managed to string me along for months, making me believe that we were progressing in the relationship when we definitely really weren't. In that time frame, my self-worth absolutely vanished as I tried to change who I was to get him to choose me and to love me. Then every time he still wouldn't commit to me, I lost myself more and more. There was nothing I could do to get him to choose me, and that just made my self-worth completely disappear. On top of my self-worth taking a huge hit, I also became extremely unhealthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. And through his honestly very impressive manipulation, I didn't even see it coming, I ended up becoming highly dependent on him. We also dated during a period in my life where I was dealing with a lot of toxic friendships, to the point where I was being viciously bullied in my own home by my female roommates, and I was forced to break my lease early and find a new place to live. It was awful. Because of that, I was already in a really bad spot mentally and emotionally. So when this guy came along, promising me the world and making me feel so special, I latched onto him. I needed someone to protect me. I needed a place to go when my living situation got rough. I needed a safe space. I needed someone who was providing me with validation. And this guy I was in a situationship with, he happened to do just that for a short period of time, at least. After his period of complete love bombing ended and he flipped a switch on me, did a total 180 on me, that's when my mental health hit the negatives. My mental health got so bad that I couldn't think straight. I couldn't make sense of what was real and what wasn't, what was right or not, what was even happening to me. My sense of identity and my sense of reality was slipping. It was gone. I wasn't sleeping, I lost weight, I was performing poorly at my job. I had to fight tooth and nail to do anything other than focus on that relationship. My friendships got worse. It was bad, you guys, and I mean really, really bad. It got so bad that one of my girlfriends had to literally sit me down and basically yell at me in a loving way to get me to kind of wake up and see that I needed actual help, that this relationship was destroying me slowly but surely. Luckily, her wake up did the trick, and I was able to snap out of the pain long enough to stand up for myself and leave that situationship, to leave that guy. But the fact that I was so highly affected, even though I'm someone who studies relationships and cares a ton about her mental health, shows how truly harmful relationships can be when they are the wrong relationships to be in, that is. I could tell numerous stories like the one I told at the start of this episode and the one I told just now to illustrate even further just how important choosing your relationships wisely is, or getting out of an unhealthy one. or healing your own wounds so you know how to attract, create, and keep healthier relationships as a result. Your life's vitality depends on it. I also want to note that it's important to recognize that the impact of an unhealthy relationship is not limited to the duration of the relationship itself. The scars left over can linger. They can affect future relationships and perpetuate a cycle of toxic patterns unless they are addressed. It is so important to address these things, you guys. And in the same breath, the length of the relationship also does not determine how affected you are or are not too. You can be in a 2-month situationship that damages your mental health more than ending a 5-year relationship does. Timing in this case is not everything. As you can see in my own story with that 7-month long situationship, just those 7 months impacted me greatly for years to come. Recognizing the signs of an unhealthy relationship is the first step towards positive change. Whether you're experiencing emotional abuse, control issues, or something less intense like a lack of communication, reaching out to mental health professionals, to coaches, to support groups, or to trusted friends and mentors will provide the necessary support to navigate these challenges that you need. Healing from the effects of an unhealthy relationship is a journey. It will take time. But most importantly, it is very, very possible. Working with a coach, for example, can provide you with the tools you need to rebuild your self esteem, to establish healthy boundaries, and to develop skills to build better relationships in your future. This is the work I've devoted my own life to, and in my personal life, having a coach was a huge factor in my process of healing from unhealthy relationships too. It really does work, and it was really, really important to try out. You guys, I did therapy, like I mentioned earlier, for 3, 4, maybe even 5 years on and off after my whole incident in 2017. And it was amazing. I think therapy is so important for people to do. But for me, at least, there was kind of a cap on therapy. Therapy really helped me understand what I went through. It helped me really put words to my trauma. I could write a book about my trauma at this point, I always say. But the difference between therapy and coaching is that a therapist can't hold you accountable, they can't give you action steps. A therapist's job is to ask you questions so you can give yourself the answers that are already inside of you. Coaching, on the other hand, can be your accountability partner. A coach is somebody who can call you out, who can remind you that you're more than how you're acting. A coach can give you action items and challenges and things to read and homework to do, all to help you grow when you are or are not working with them in between your sessions or even after your relationship with that coach ends. Coaching for me was the game changer. It was what helped me get out of those patterns that I was perpetuating in my own life of attracting those unhealthy toxic matches, and it's what helped me build the healthiest relationship of my life, the one that I'm currently in right now. Now, before I wrap up today's episode, everyone, I want to really emphasize the importance of prioritizing mental health and fostering healthy relationships. So many factors of our lives, honestly, I would argue every factor in our lives, is tied to the relationships we are surrounded by. Your physical health, your job performance, your mood, your mental health, your social life, your ability to be productive, your sleep patterns and energy levels, your spirituality, your emotions, all of those things are affected by your relationships, which is why removing yourself from unhealthy relationships and working hard to create healthier ones is imperative. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I fight to help people build better relationships, starting with the one they have with themselves. As you guys heard, in my own life, I've experienced firsthand just how much relationships can affect your mental health. And as a result, every other area of a person's being too. I struggled to keep jobs. I was a bad friend. I attracted bad friends in return. I lost out on opportunities. I stunted my own development and so much more, all because unhealthy relationships were destroying my well being. They were running my life. But like me, you too can decide that that won't work for you. You too can decide that enough is enough and that you, like everyone else in this world, deserves to be happy, healthy, and whole. You can decide to rewrite the rest of your story and make it a beautiful one, filled with healthy, fulfilling relationships. You can do exactly that, just like I did. If you or someone you know is struggling, please don't hesitate to seek support and start today. You can do something as simple as heading to my Instagram or TikTok at Coach Kate DeRocher and DM me the word capable. This will let me know that you're ready to break free from unhealthy patterns and build better relationships through that process. Once I get your DM, we'll set up a consultation and explore how coaching could look for you. Just one simple word and one simple DM can change your life. I promise. I know it did for me. Remember, you guys, you only have one life to live. So please, please, please make it a good one. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Wildly Capable with Kate. I love doing this with you guys. And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe, like, and review the show on whichever podcast streaming platform you get your shows through. As I continue to build this podcast, your reviews and engagement really do help me. They help me so much. So if I gave you any value today, any at all, I only ask in return that you give me a little boost in this way too. It's incredibly appreciated. Thank you guys again. I'll see you next week.